Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 1st of March. I can't believe the year is flying in. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm delighted to say we're joined by a debutant on the video. I can't quite believe it's taken so long to get him on, but Martyn Ramsay joins us. How are you doing, Martyn?
Derek Clark, as I live and breathe. Yeah, it's good to be on. Have it in the background at work in the morning, but yeah, good to stretch the legs and get on the field for the first time.
Yeah, it's fantastic to have you on. And anyone that's maybe tuning into the video that maybe hasn't subscribed to the website, I do urge you to check out Martyn's pieces on there. They're absolutely sensational. Before we talk all things Rangers, just a quick word. First of all, we've got an offer on the website just now. You can see the little ticker below. If you subscribe to the Rangers Review, you get 2 months for just £2. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. And a quick word for our sponsor as well, Seneca Hair Restoration. You can see the banner on your screen there. If you're looking to reinvigorate the top of your head, if you want a Todd Cantwell or similar style, a Yanis Hadji perhaps, or a Joshua Barry, then these are the guys you want to go to for that. They're the number one hair restoration corporation in Europe, no less. So I've stuck the links, as always, in the description box, so do go check them out if that is something you're thinking of. Right, let's talk Rangers. Martyn, it's 3 days after Sunday, of course. Johnny and Joshua discussed it yesterday. We were also on Monday, myself, Stevie Clifford and Joshua discussing the fallout from the game. You were at Hampden on Sunday. Where did it all go wrong for Rangers for you?
I think I'd rather talk about hair restoration, Derek, to be honest. Like many other people, it went wrong about 2 o'clock when we had the team, and that disappointment that we've had a lot of decent signings over the last few years. We know this rebuild is what it is. It's going to take a while, but probably few as exciting as Nico Raskin. And I know he's not played a lot of football, and I know it's a big game and blah blah blah, but he has shown technical qualities and just a kind of energy and personality that we know we've been missing. And you need in a game like this. This is not our first Old Firm game, Derek, in terms of viewers. You know what you need to see on the pitch that day. And there was just a real sense of deflation when I think the manager just went that little bit conservative with players who are either not in form or not in great shape physically. And we feared, and we saw what we feared very quickly, sadly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that feeling of deflation is one that you hear quite a lot from supporters when the team was announced. Of course, Michael Beale has got a lot right since returning to the club from QPR, hasn't he, Martyn? But I think that was a sobering lesson on Sunday. It didn't have the best of days at the office. Team selection was one. I think I wrote my piece on Monday. I think the fact that Lundstram and Kamara lasted so long was another mistake on his part. The taking off Alfredo, don't think was the best idea either. Did he overthink it, do you think, on Sunday?
Possibly. It's easy for us to say. It's not our jobs that are resting on games like this. And it is important we don't lose all perspective. We're going to talk probably about the weekend, maybe at the end of it. And it's clear he has got Rangers in a shape where we will take as many points as possible against the rest of the league, which you have to do anyway if you want to win the title, but especially against the Celtic team, you need to be winning every week. We weren't, and we have been. So that's one stage done. And we've been doing it roughly by playing our way and kind of imposing our game on the opposition.
Yeah.
And then to go back on that quite considerably, I think is probably signs of just being a wee bit too cautious. There was a sign, wasn't there, at Ibrox when they were starting to just push us back to 75 minutes, 80 minutes, and he brought James Sand on when a lot of people were maybe asking for the kind of energy and press of Scott Arfield for those last 10, and we retreated, and of course the inevitable happened. So there's maybe a sign there. Look, it's a managerial prerogative to start whatever starting 11 you want, you're in there. You know these guys, you've spoken to them. You know with what you're working. We don't. I think he probably relied on his powers of inspiration at half-time far more than he should have. The changes needed to be. I was stunned there wasn't at least one at half-time. And I know he's not done that before. He didn't do it at Ibrox, and he got a tune out of the team looked completely different early in the second half at Ibrox, if you remember. And all that was just a chat. Tannadice, there's been a few other bits and pieces where we have looked reinvigorated and refreshed, but we were so behind that I just think that was probably a big ask, and then waited too long, of course, before making that kind of triple sub. And as I'm sure has been mentioned this week, for 10 minutes after the goal and then the substitution, we looked more like a team at Celtic. They've got a lead to protect, but we looked dangerous. We looked coherent, cohesive. Raskin had that one where he's back to goal, turns immediately and quickly passes it forward.
Yeah.
And it's all we've been asking for about 4 years, really, in a midfield. And you're pressing Celtic in their weak spots, which is Joe Hart with the ball. Their centre halves, especially Starfelt, with the ball at all. And all of a sudden they're making mistakes. And you're right, there's an equaliser on here. And then it becomes a 15-minute cup final. And, well, who knows? And then the substitution of Morelos. Now, I've not been a huge fan of Morelos of late, and he was a wee bit out of it in the first half. But because he had Cantwell and Raskin so close to him, I felt he became more alive and looked far more dangerous. When Cholak came on, who's not a good sub, we looked more direct immediately and negated all the good things we'd seen for 10, 15 minutes. And it wasn't a good day. It was a kind of catalogue of bad decisions. He's a rookie manager. I think as fans, we probably need to take a step back and accept that's going to happen. Horrendous when it happens on Sunday. But he has to learn. He has to learn pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a point I made on Monday as well. We do need to understand it's different being a top level coach and being the main man in the dugout. Of course, so many comments coming in here, Martin. There was a few I wanted to touch on. There was one praising, I think Ian Campbell mentioned it, praising Johnny's piece yesterday on the injury front. So many injuries this season. I can't remember a season like this, to be honest with you, but he picked out that the 7 summer signings, they've missed 78 out of 182 games through injury, 43% of available games. Is that a factor we need to consider as well? I mean, it's been a pretty depressing season in terms of that injury front. I mean, even Kamar Roof, he scored against Livingston, and it's the story of his season. Unavailable again. Who knows when we're going to see him back in the Rangers jersey? But it's been a real depressing affair, hasn't it, this season? Has that been a factor, do you think, that we need to consider?
Of course, managers can only work with what they've got. It's not their job. Well, not their job wholly to keep everybody in shape. There are other people there to do that. This feels as old as the hills, though, Derek. I mean, I know I'm living in the 1990s at the moment, but you couldn't hear radio playing on a Saturday without, what the hell's going on at Rangers? Where are they training and what they're doing there, because they just keep picking up injuries all the time. There were other reasons for that, I think it's probably fair to say, in terms of conditioning, etc. But I think Johnny's piece was pertinent. Those numbers are either incredibly bad luck, or there's something not quite right, especially with muscle injuries, especially with timing. Sometimes it is just your bad luck. I mean, Roof, for example, we knew the score with Roof. You're not getting a player that good coming to us at all, but coming to us for the price we paid without running that gauntlet of availability and injury, because he had a career like that. I don't think Yilmaz has a career like that. I'm not really sure Tom Lawrence has had a career like that. So there's possibly just a wee bit of bad luck in there as well. But it just seems that's always been the way at Rangers, just injury after injury after injury. But this season, especially in that crux that obviously led to humiliation after humiliation in the autumn. The central defence, for example, was probably as bad as I've seen it. And again, going back to these signings that give you a wee bit of hope, Johnny. Derek. Tom Lawrence. The early signs from him were like, right, okay, you've got someone who's just a wee bit different, a wee bit more central, and given us that threat, you can ally that to Tillman perhaps, and he stretches for a ball in the 93rd minute at home to Ross County, and then he's out again after that. It has been a season of woe, but I would agree with Johnny's suggestion that there's probably something bigger to be concerned about there.
Yeah. So many comments coming in here. Tam Brown says, I don't understand risking Roof on a plastic pitch, of course, talking about the Tony Macaroni. Andy McInnes says, any update on Ridvan? We'll try and get an update when we speak to the manager tomorrow, Andy. That's an interesting one. I mean, is it 12 weeks? When did they say it was 12 weeks? It was a worst hamstring injury you could... you could encounter, Martyn. Yeah, of course it had to be. But I'm trying to recall when he actually said that and when he was due to be back, because there hasn't been any sort of indication that he's nearing a return, is there?
Should be back by now, I think, was my recollection. But no, there's been no hint of encouragement there. But yeah, absolutely, the worst you've ever seen would very much be typical of this season for us.
Yeah, very in keeping. An interesting point, just touching on the press conference, Macca gets in touch. Morning, guys. Given the criticism Michael Beale has received all round, do you think he'll be less open in tomorrow's presser? There was a lot of noise prior to the Cup final, Martyn. I had a bit of a ding-dong with Chris Sutton. I don't think entirely helped. Do you think he'll be more reserved? I think he's just an open guy. He loves talking football, Michael Beale. He's fantastic for us in terms of newsworthy headlines and different sound bites and what have you. But can you see him changing his approach somewhat?
I find this fascinating, and I'll be amazed if there's a huge change in the space of a few days. There probably will be over time. I was speaking to someone earlier in the week about Graham Potter, who is another very matter of fact, very, very open guy who just loves to talk football. And the difference between him and Michael Beale and Gio and Gerrard and a lot of these ex-superstar players that turn into managers, so they've been used to dealing with the media since they were teenagers, used to giving us nothing, seeing really the media as something not to be trusted, something to be feared, absolutely on guard at all times, and press conferences become a bit of a nonsense, really, don't they? They really, really cliche sound, not even interesting sound bites, but just stuff you've heard time and time again. And all of a sudden, you get this guy who would talk for an hour if you let him, because he just loves the game, loves his job, and is just very, very enthusiastic, very open, because he's not been brought up with that sense of being on guard. And Graham Potter reminded me quite a bit of that this week. There's a lot to be said for it. How often have people moaned about the kind of monochrome nature of football, these kind of automatons that just say the same thing, and right, you've got character now, you get someone who's actually going to explain this, that and the other, who will engage with certain forces and certain critics and supporters or whatever. This brings colour, it brings interest, which is great if you're neutral, and it's great, as you said, if you're working on our space as we are at the moment. But the fan in you is like, can we just wrap up a wee bit? Can we just kind of keep that tight? So it will be very interesting to see if there's this huge change. Be very interesting to see if, I know immediately he wasn't taking much in the way of responsibility for those decisions, where he could defend a lot of those selections and those choices in game. I wonder, upon sleeping on that over a few nights, restless nights, I presume, that he's maybe changed his mind, and if he will be open about that.
Yeah, interesting. Lots of comments coming in. Stephen Smith says, certainly can talk a good game, but Sunday's decision-making asks big questions. Simple Simon Hadapai, what a fantastic username. Always mention that. Too many of our squad talk a lot too. It's the talking on the pitch, of course, that the fans want to see. Interesting points coming in as well here. Ross Armour says, and this was something Michael Beale touched on prior to the final as well. I see it's a sort of had differing views from the fan base with his comments regarding that. He says there would still have been a major rebuild needed, whether we'd have won the League Cup or not. That's the fact of the matter, Martyn, isn't it? I mean, as much as it would be brilliant to win that trophy, it's been long overdue, of course, but there is major rebuilding work required. I think he touched on this after the game. He said that the squad needs revamped, which I think he said is that the first time publicly? I think he's talked about that, which I found quite telling.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things there. Absolutely, we know the state of play in the summer. I feel we're always saying that, though, about summer. That's a huge summer for Rangers. Massive rebuild. We need to get players out. Said that for how many years? Even after 55, there was more sentient and sensible ones were saying, yep, that's been lovely, but there's quite a few that we could we need to kick on from here and et cetera, et cetera. If Taverborna had flipped that free kick into the top bin, and you do have that 15-minute cup final I'm talking about, and somehow we squeeze through, we have a great night, and we're thinking we're on their coattails again and really back in it, there's possibly a danger of papering over cracks, of a bit of delusion, and maybe the one thing to take away from Sunday is exactly the reality of it. It really that's what Sunday was. It was a real reality check and a painful reminder of the work that's still to be done. But yeah, I found that interesting because you were there at his unveiling as well as I was, Derek. I'm sure. He was at great pains to mention that the opposite was true. That this isn't a Rangers team that's absolutely broken. I don't believe that. Some great players here. Blah blah blah. Now, managers will say that anyway. Who's going to come in November, December time, knowing that January is always a difficult month to do a lot of business, and say, yeah, this needs ripped up, because you're essentially saying I've got 5-6 months of dead rubbers here, because I don't think we can be competitive. I don't think we can do anything. So he's obviously not going to say that. He will obviously have the self-belief that they just need whispered into to being great again, and I can do that. Because all managers believe they can. That's why some players keep getting signed, even though they break down or they're bad off the field or whatever, because football managers and their ego think, I'll get a tune out of this one mercurial player, for example. So there's probably a few things, but he was saying very much the opposite when he arrived, and perhaps the reality checks dawned on him. At least he's able to say that publicly, that there's a lot need to go. Getting them out, though, is easier said than done. You need a buyer, and that's the thing that football fans kind of forget. There needs to be someone else willing to spend and spend what you think is right.
Yeah, that's absolutely nailing the head there. That's James Skeen raises a point as well. He says, problem is, do we have the finance for a big rebuild? Well, Cantwell and Raskin were brought in for relatively moderate fees before the end of their contracts, of course, but that's Rangers have to get smart and look outside the box with regards to recruitment. But you're right, Martyn, I think it's finding buyers for players that have underperformed for some time now. I think, like you say, it's easier said than done. Ian McDougall says, as painful as Sunday was, isn't it nice that we look inward and see why we lost, and we don't look outside and blame everyone else? I think there's a realisation amongst the Rangers support, and I think from Michael Beale that change is very much required. And this is an interesting point, just touching on from here on in for the end of the season. Barry Smith says, would rather we play Devine, Lowry, Uri and Rice for the remainder of the season. And that's echoed by Ian Ross, who says, surely the time is right for Beale to give the youth players a run in the team, namely... no, there's spotted Lowry and King in the stands, suited and booted at Hampden on Sunday. What do you make of these points, Martyn? Is an ample time, do you think, for Michael Beale to bleed the youngsters and see what they can do with an eye on next season, perhaps?
The more things change, the more things stay the same. Every time when the wheels come off a season or feel that they're coming off a season, it's set the thing on fire, give the kids a chance, because we're so tolerant of youngsters at Rangers, famously, and won't be on their backs if they're not the complete package in 2 or 3 games, especially at Ibrox. Listen, if any of those players, especially Lowry, who's obviously been on the fringes and there's a lot of hope around them, if they're good, they'll play. I never really understand how people kind of seem to forget this. Managers are under pressure. If they've got a great player sitting there, or they've got a player that they think over the course of a few games can really turn their team into something else, they will use them. If they're not, there's maybe a reason for why that's not happening. So yeah, it's where we go to. It's where we've always, again, we've been here before. Yeah, we always want to see more of these players, especially when there's genuine excitement, genuine noise around them. But we've got to be careful that it's not counterproductive. That they're walking into an atmosphere that's absolutely horrific.
Yeah,
we're coming out of that post-Old Firm retribution and recrimination and reflection, and we're nearly at the weekend again, where we maybe just gain that bit of perspective. But it's been burn it all down, start again pretty much all week.
Yeah, I want to get your views on a comment. I mean, Malik Tillman is a player that dominates these videos, Martyn, and should Rangers bring him in permanently from Bayern Munich, Finn Fogel gets in touch. Rangers can't afford to fling most of their summer budget at Tillman. $6 million would get you two good players if spent right. Where do you stand on that debate? For me, it's still a no-brainer for me. I know he never had the best of games on Sunday. I don't think he's entirely to blame for the result, to be honest. But in the main, I think he's been sensational this season. At the start of his professional career, I'd pay the money now. I'd get him in. But where do you stand on it?
Wouldn't go sensational, but he's been impressive. Especially this is his first proper season in men's football, really, isn't it?
Yes.
In a different country, and with all the delights and challenges that the Scottish football throws up, he's been quite impressive. And I think overall it makes sense. Again, how do you fund that? Okay, we've got on paper, and this is the thing at Rangers, we've always talked about, on paper we've got loads of players for these positions. Well, let's assume one of them isn't going to be fit at one time. But we do have a lot of those kind of number 10s. Probably can't service them all. So would you sell Hadji to fund Tillman? I would personally, but it needs a bit of that give and go. You can't have it all. Our squad's too big as it is, so it's maybe going to take some decisions need to be taken. I think about a lot of players, as we know. But I think we get 2 or 3 good years out of them, and then we make more than 6 million. I would hope.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And touching on Hadji, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I mean, the boys had talking about injuries, it's dominating this video, but he's had such an unfortunate time. It was one of those awkward ones as well. And he's came back. He looked off the pace, understandably so, against Partick Thistle. Not really had a look in from then on in. I know he was warming up quite a fair bit on Sunday, but never came on to impact the game. It's one of those ones, Martyn. The jury's out if he can reach the level that we've seen him play prior to the injury, isn't it? The thing with knee injuries is it's a difficult one. I think we need to give the lad for the end of the season to try and get up to speed and then judge him next season. But it's one of those ones that an asset that Rangers can cash in on. Would you be tempted in the summer? I think you would be.
I would. Well, you're looking at what Hadji, Tillman, Lawrence, maybe Cantwell.
Yes. Yeah.
In that kind of those kind of areas. I'm not sure we can afford to have 4 players of that kind of stature, that kind of quality there. I don't think we can. So again, it's ruthless decision making, which hasn't really happened since. Hasn't really happened at all, really, in living memory. It's kind of the problem getting into that post 55 season. We needed to cash in on a couple of those players when the star was high, because that's life. We need to trade well, and that's going to take a bit of time. We've obviously had a couple of successes. We need a lot more. And if you and I won Euro Millions, Derek, this week, I still don't think we could blow Celtic out of the water just because of FFP and what kind of restrictions are there in any case. So we need to be we just need to be ruthless about how we do our business and how we create our squads. And I can't see all four of them being there in the summer. And I think there's always going to be an interest in Hadji. Galatasaray, for example. He's obviously got a lot of talent. It's a huge ask for him to come back from from such a dreadful injury, but the layoff was, was a full year.
Yeah,
I think that's a big ask. And if it was there, if there was a deal to be done around that 4 to 6 million that effectively pays for that Tillman investment, then that would be a no-brainer for me personally.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in with regards to Hadji. This one from Hugh says, personally, I think Hadji will find it difficult coming back. The lad has been out for a while. Andy Mitchell also raises a point. Hadji has a positive mindset, unlike some. He is an intelligent young lad. He speaks very well, Yanis. But it's whether he can reach those levels. As I mentioned, the jury is out. Blame game is in full operation from Sunday. I've seen a lot of criticism for James Tavernier as well, Martin. Aldo says, Tav, sell or keep. Do you think that the criticism is warranted? A lot of fans I've seen, well, you know what it's like after an Old Firm defeat. It's pretty extreme views, somewhat in a change of captaincy, which I don't necessarily think is the right thing to do. I don't think much can come of that, to be honest with you. But the criticism of James Tavernier, do you think that's justified?
I think scapegoat is a word that's never far from our lips after such a defeat. And it's a team game. We don't really have the bandwidth to blame absolutely everybody and go through that individual process for them all. So one or two will do. The skipper usually is, in any team, after a bad defeat, is usually the one. There's an issue with stopping crosses. We know that, and we've known that for some time. Offset usually by some other attributes that we're, very okay with, and that seems to be the trade-off with Tavernier for some time. That's nothing new. The issues around the goal will, I'm sure we've all discussed it this week, are multifactorial, and there's a lot of authors to those particular calamities. And it's a structural issue because I have seen that goal conceded time and time again in big games. I think there's been a noticeable drop-off this season physically, because where he did combat that some defensive frailty, doing it anywhere near as bad as people have always made out over the years, was that absolute energy and dynamism and an end product from an attacking sense. I'm not sure he's looked anywhere near as dynamic this season, that he's looked anywhere near it since Seville, to be honest. Quite a few players have not really kicked the ball since that Leipzig game at Ibrox, haven't they? So we're well reaching the end. We do need to think again. We're talking about being ruthless and talking about succession planning and have players given us their lot, and are they on the turn, and what do they have left to give? And the James Tavernier of 2-3 years ago, we're probably not going to see again. It's probably logical to presume that we won't, because so much of that was based on this incredible engine that at some point has to slow down, has to fail. So there's definitely a conversation there. Listen, he stepped up to be captain. He was asked to be captain. It's not his fault that the Rangers probably haven't bought that what British fans like to see is that kind of dominating figure. So that's not really his issue, I don't think, although it's been kind of forced on him. So he's long down the list of my priorities, I'll be honest, and my problems, but it's definitely one that's there for sure.
Yeah, David Thompson gets in touch. He says, I agree with Martyn. We need to be ruthless, which includes our captain. And Jim McCarroll says, Tav is obviously an attacking fullback, so he needs cover when he goes forward. Certainly differing views to the Rangers skipper. And a bit of praise for you, Martyn. World's greatest DJ gets in touch. Good friend of the show. Enjoyed listening to Martyn this morning. Hope he becomes a regular on the show. We'll just need to have a word with your boss, Martyn. Hopefully we can get you on more often. That's what the public want and demand. And just before we go, just a quick word. Martyn, if you've not bought his first book, absolutely sensational, but he's got a new book out as well coming out later this month. He's going to be on a video with Johnny as well later this week discussing it in great detail. Martyn, just a quick word on it. Revolution, it looks at the Rangers between 1986 and 1992. Just a quick plug for your book, Martyn. Fire away.
Thank you. It will be one of two, hopefully, this year. Anyone who's been on Heart and Hands Patreon, hopefully will have heard my 54, 55 part series called Dominant, which went from 86 to 98. The dream was to have a book that covered all that, but it became very clear very quickly it was going to be too big, so we split into two. So yes, Revolution tells the story, funnily enough, of the Rangers Revolution, how it started and how it faded and how by 92 it was over, but also looks at other revolutions that were taking place in Scotland as a society and football as a sport, because obviously by 1982 there were other bigger revolutions taking place and about to shape what happened next. So that's out on the 14th of March. You can pre-order from heartandhand.co.uk/revolution if you want one signed and with free postage and packaging. I'm fighting Jeff Bezos back for the pre-order dates anyway, Derek.
Well, we wish you all the very best with it, Martyn. If it's anything like your first book, it's going to be brilliant. I'd recommend you go and pre-order, folks. It's going to be brilliant. And as I mentioned, he's going to be on, Martyn, with Johnny later on in the week discussing that book in closer detail. Big thanks to Martyn. Thank you for coming on.
Pleasure, Derek. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for interacting with the show. Just a reminder, if you want to subscribe to the website, lots of fantastic content on there. You can subscribe now for £2 for just 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. We'll be back tomorrow as we begin to look ahead to the match at the weekend. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Bye for now.